we need to make the founding fathers to be the important folks. And I think you gentlemen really had an excellent discussion here just a little bit about this is the gang thing. Okay, once again, the white gang wants to write the history, and the history simply excludes those people that they feel aren't important. They aren't the right color. They serve their purpose of being the target of eradication, and that's the end of it. It's not part. They don't want it in our history books. I was seeing something. I just heard this the other day that they're talking about how the white slave owners were really the people that helped out the slaves. Completely rewriting, twisting it in a totally. You would think. The engineer in me goes, how can this be? The facts are this, this, and this, and then you go this.
We're back live again. Again, this is a live call-in show, and if you have any questions, you can call in. My next guest is Mr. Kevin Muhammad. Kevin, over the years, has exhibited a very vast enthusiasm and knowledge base of Fort Wayne history. But, in the clip here, we just heard Tom Butler talking about the white gang and who writes history. And they put the Anthony Waynes and the guys who came here to clear the landscape for the white settlers to move in, and they put them on a pedestal and called Indians savages. And you'll still find books where Indians are referred to as savages. And earlier yourself, you even referred to the early Americans as a gang. Elaborate on that just a little bit, please.
Well, the gang mentality is to gang up your posse and to overthrow or to overtake something or someone or something that someone else has that you want. And this is the American history. There were already people here settled on this land, but those out of Europe, they wanted to establish something for themselves, which is a good idea, which is something that we as a people are also going to have to consider now to do for ourselves. But they said, well, hey, we're willing to do whatever it takes to get what we want. And if that means to put diseased blankets on those to get them off of the land, to kill them off and to kill their children, we'll do it. If it means making false promises, we'll do it. If it means shedding as much blood as we have to, this is how American history started.
Well, as they do that, coming into an area where other people were there with the purpose of taking this land, if somebody's keeping statistics, there's at some point in this land here, it's going to be record numbers of those folks coming in getting killed. For those who are keeping track of things. Today is November 3rd. In 2 days from now, it's November 5th. November 5th, 1791, is the anniversary of St. Clair's defeat. St. Clair, that's when the most whites were killed in U.S. history, led by Chief Little Turtle, who was located here in Kikianga, which is now called Fort Wayne. November 5th. And of course, the Americans only attacked here in October, November, so that the Indians they didn't kill would starve to death during the winter months. Because when they attacked, they'd kill the Indians and burn the crops and things like that.
That's gangster.
but my point is, you don't hear about this stuff. And I bring it up year after year after year, and when I say it, there's no echo. It doesn't register. Why is it that downtown Fort Wayne is so reluctant to talk about and acknowledge its history?
Well, the municipality of Fort Wayne knows its history. And you see placards and markers acknowledging that history. So they know the history. Maybe the reluctancy is sometimes when somebody brings up that history, they might think less of you. Say, who are you to tell us about our history? But they know that history that you're citing is true, and how this land was acquired, and the means to get it is a true fact.
But other places, they use the most catastrophic events as marketing opportunities to attract people to their location, saying, this is what happened here. But Fort Wayne keeps it under the rug. You know, I wrote an article recently talking about the importance of changing the Fort Wayne history narrative from a sole focus on Anthony Wayne, because, you know, Fort Wayne, Anthony Wayne, and you can stop anybody almost here. They know Anthony Wayne, they can spell it, and they're clueless as to, you know, what he came into. My point in suggesting that the narrative should be changed is that when Anthony Wayne arrived on the scene, he came here for a reason, and those Indians were living here, and they're not treated as being equal. But we're talking about so much about inclusion today. So my take is, if you want real inclusion, you just can't start today with the fat people and the short people, and we're all going to hug, we're all equal. You got to address what happened to the historic blacks and historic Indians, especially in the Indiana bicentennial. Yeah. You have nobody talking about the bicentennial. Your take?
Well, this is interesting because I like the way the Honorable Elijah Muhammad put it. He said, don't think that all of a sudden that your 400-year-old slave master and enemy is now all of a sudden your friend. See what truth will do? I'll hold it. But and the same is true with others of the indigenous people that have had this kind of run-in with the Europeans in the early American history. I don't know if I'm pinpointing the question that you have for me, but it's something that has to be talked about, and I applaud your effort in wanting to change the Fort Wayne narrative. I like the way you put that, the way that Fort Wayne history is talked about, because it's very important, it's very significant, especially in this state right here. Many of the, including Anthony Wayne, referred to this area as the gateway to the West. They knew that they had to find and conquer this particular area of the country in order to move further west. So this was a key battleground that George Washington, not George Washington, but Anthony Wayne, under the direction of George Washington, had to acquire this land.
Well, you know, what's so interesting about this land here, I've been recently working with people in Michigan, and one of the first things they asked me was to help connect their history out of Niles, Michigan, to the broader region, the Great Lakes area. To do that, you got to talk about Fort Wayne, because Fort Wayne is the key to the whole Great Lakes region, because after Anthony Wayne was victorious, they signed a treaty called the Treaty of Greenville. And that Treaty of Greenville gave Anthony Wayne and the Americans Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota, 6 states. And we never talk about the fact that if Anthony Wayne would have lost this battle, how we might be having a conversation here in French perhaps, or we might be part of Canada right now. They never tell the rest of the story. And if we're going to be inclusive, what's wrong with telling the whole story? I mean, I don't see what's wrong with that.
Nothing at all. Like, again, I applaud your efforts in pulling up the research. Nothing is wrong with talking about that history. We have to talk about that history. This narrative is going to come to a head, because the native people, they want their land back. The Hispanic people want their land back. And certainly we, as blacks who were raised as slaves in this country, we fought, bled, and died to give America a 300-year jump start of wealth that created a wealth gap and has made America prosperous, has created generations of wealthy European families to this day. So we have a vested interest as well. So the history is very, very important. If you're accused of a crime, the law may say, well, let's check his past. Let's check his criminal history. Let's check and see even his mother and father, were they engaged in similar activity that may give way to your present activity. So what we have is a long line of this kind of gangster behavior. And I believe it was Thomas Jefferson that said that he trembled that the God of justice would not sleep forever. So right now, whether we want to admit it or not, this country that we live in, and there are many, many opportunities in this country, but this country, because of its evil that it has done to darker people and poor people, is under divine judgment as we speak. And this is in all of the scriptures that I've read, that America is under divine judgment. It has a way out from the judgment, but it's a very small window of time that they have to do the right thing to make a better future for itself.
But right now is the ideal time. Today is November 3rd. December 11th is the 200-year anniversary of the Indiana Bicentennial. 200 years of killing people, getting rid of people. 1830 was the Indian Removal Act. You don't see many Indians around here anymore, and during the same time, blacks are focusing on black history. They crack on me all the time because I look at the larger picture of history, and they say, no, you should focus more on black history. But when you look at the fact that the Indian Removal Act in 1830, 1851 in the Indiana Constitution, Article 13, it talks about how basically they didn't want blacks here, and how you got fined up to, or had to have a bond of $500, which is, I think, was like $15,000 in today's terms. But also, if you chose to live here, that your bond money was going to go into a colonization fund, meant, I think, to send you to Liberia.
Oh, yeah.
So what that's telling me is Indiana's intention was to have no Indians here and no blacks. This is the bicentennial. This is the ideal time to bring forth that and to show that, yes, this is all true, and to start a new day. Just to let people know what happened, so that the racial prejudices and everything, you'll see the foundation for all that as part of our laws in the past, so we can get on with life. But that's not happening unless it does within the next month.
Within the next month, huh?
I mean, but we see no blacks. I haven't seen any black leaders talking about the importance of having a voice in this Indiana Bicentennial. This election, we're going to have a new Indiana governor, and I think one new Indiana senator. And so we're going to have
maybe
basically
even an Indiana vice president.
Yes, and nobody is talking about the 200 years of Indiana. I think we're the only state that's celebrating 200 years of birth here. And I mean, we got the opportunity to put a whole lot of things in perspective and create a whole lot of healing. And I'm not seeing the enthusiasm from blacks or anybody to do that.
Well, the time that we're living in is a very crucial time. And as I mentioned before, See, we're facing a whole lot of difficulties. I mean, just black and white trying to coexist. There's a big dynamic that comes along with that. We are two totally different people. We are all human beings, and the golden rule is to treat somebody how you want to be treated. I have absolutely no problem doing that at all. I don't care what your race or your color or ethnicity is. But as a whole, we've been forced to be together. We didn't ask to come here. We came to America under unusual circumstances. Now that we're here, from that time to this, we see a long history of, like you said, even through law, even through Constitution, how there's a certain mentality that seems to come out of the nature of those who are over us. And nothing has changed from that day to this day. So a solution to the problem, what's the solution when you're living under tyranny? What do you do? How do you move? Do you vote tyranny out? Do you vote oppression out when there's a certain mentality that exists? I like the solution that's presented by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, which he got from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. We are at the crucial time where we must be separated. You mentioned Liberia, Monrovia, under President James Monroe. Thomas Jefferson also proposed that Caucasian people suffered living under us, and we suffered living under them. And he proposed that blacks be separated either in a territory in America or elsewhere.
Well, Kevin,
I know that's probably where you didn't want to
oh,
go.
Yeah, no. I just know that you'll have to come back, and Terry Lyman will have to come back. Michelle will have to come back. See, last time we talked, I was kicked off of TV for 5 years. So I thought it was just appropriate to have you back here on the first show of me being back, because I gotta differ with you. I believe that we can coexist, but the folks here in Fort Wayne have to open those ears up and pay a little attention, because not just myself but others have something to say, and we've been ignored. I'm not blaming whites for that. I'm not blaming blacks for that, because I don't see a lot of difference between both mentalities when it comes to Fort Wayne history, because they're both equally don't really care, But anyway, I appreciate you coming here.
Thank you for having me.
We're going to be doing this every month, and like I said, we're back on the air now. We're going to be having great issues. More issues are going to happen in December. This live call-in will be monthly, and I hope you enjoy the show. As we end here, we're going to have a short song, not by me, but our Fort Wayne chief here in Fort Wayne, Conj Ridley, is going to sign off for us here. So thank you for watching, and good night.
Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round, turn me round, turn me round. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round. Gonna keep on a walking, keep on a talking, marching up to freedom land.